got a 1950s Sparkomatic Mario Andretti model. It's the MA500 with the T-handle. Very cool shifter. These were primarily used to convert the column shift type 3-speeds to floor shift models. It was simply had two gates. One gate was for first and reverse, and one was for second and third. You see up close over here the gates the way they work. Simply, when you move the stick back and forth, it either activated one gate or the other gate. It was very simple. And it had a system of stops in it as well, so you didn't, mess up your shift linkage internally in the transmission. But the Sparkomatic shifter was a die-cast, almost pot metal aluminum type of shifter, and it broke. So again, this was only for 3 speeds. Hurst made a 3-speed shifter similar to as we know, a Competition Plus shifter. And to this day, the Competition Plus shifter is still being used. It's on probably millions of 4-speed transmissions, this shifter. And so today I thought it'd be a good idea. I got a shifter in from a customer to put on a new transmission I was building. It was kind of dirty and messed up. So I figured I'd show you how I take it apart and clean it and put it back together again, and actually show you how some of the internals work of the shifter. A lot of people don't know how they work internally. So check it out how I do that, and let me know what you think. Subscribe to my channel, okay? I need to get some mineral spirits. It says it cleans and thins. And a couple of them maybe like some of these little small ones for some detail work. Alright, so you can use these things like coupling nuts. I'm gonna take a 3/8 one. Okay. I'm gonna take a 1/2-inch 13 one. When I come to this store, I'm constantly spending too much money, so I want to get out of here as quick as possible. I hate this place.
2218.
2218. So I'm building a new M22Z transmission today. And this transmission is going in a car that has a Hurst shifter. The customer gave me his old Hurst shifter body to check out, and it's in good shape, but it's pretty dirty. So here's what you need to get a Competition Plus shifter apart. That little threaded coupler I bought at Home Depot, I used a socket head screw and I put it in here like this. I'm going to spread this base apart. But before we do that, we have to take out the pivot pin and also the dust plate. A lot of shifters don't have the dust plate on them. This is the dust plate. You just prise out like this. Now what you use is a screwdriver, a small screwdriver, to kind of get in over here. That's why I had it soaking in solvent. Sometimes you can pull it right out, you see? Now what I'll do is I'll take this little gadget I made. Now you could use punches and pry it open, but if you want, just put this in like this. Simply use a wrench to hold this in place and a pair of pliers to spread this. And all you want to do is just lodge the plate. Almost. Yep. Take it out. Okay? Take this off, flip it around this way, and squash it back in the vise. I'm going to take this little screw out over here. Now, I had this soaking for about 2 hours, so everything seems nice and free, but you really don't want to force these screws or try to break them. Sometimes there's little washes here. There, you see that washer over here? You don't want to lose that. Okay? So everything will kind of come out, and you want to keep everything intact. Make sure nothing else is here. We're going to put it on the bench now. All right, so take note of this situation. Let's look how these go. The reverse arm bends in, the 1-2 arm bends in, and the 3-4 arm bends out, okay? Some shifters may be different, and you want to keep it the same way. So lay it out like this. Like this. Let's get these over here. Like this. That. This. And like this. Okay. So first what you want to check for is that none of these holes are oblong, and they all look really good. The shim plates look in really excellent shape. So if you notice how this plate has got a wave to it, it's kind of a spring shim plate. And the idea is it keeps all the linkage arms loaded so they don't rattle. This is your whole plunger assembly. What you want to check for that the plunger isn't worn. And you can see that it fits well in the gates. Usually if a shifter is worn, this is going to be really sloppy. Nice. So I'm going to clean all these parts up. Now, a little bit about this piece. You could take this apart. It's extremely difficult to get back together again. And what you're checking to see that the pins are in good shape and that the plunger isn't really worn. But I don't really recommend taking this apart, because if you do, you may not be able to get it together unless you really have a lot of compression spring tools and things of that nature. This little gadget over here is a reverse bias spring. You notice the way it's got this kind of little point to it over here. And this little point on it is what actually makes it kick out. It's actually part of the Hurst patent. So let's clean up everything and let's put it back together. And maybe when we clean it up, maybe we'll find some other things wrong with it. But it's pretty caked up. But this shifter should clean up really nice. So I borrowed this little pot from the kitchen. I'll use it to clean these parts if you don't have a part. I have a parts cleaner, but I'm doing it like this because maybe you don't have a parts cleaner. So this is the next best thing to do. And of course you want to dispose of this properly. So I'm going to do all the parts like this and clean them up. And as I'm inspecting it, I'm inspecting to see if the hole is oblong, but the gate hole is in really nice shape. The pivot pins can sometimes wear, and you want to check those too. It's like the wrist pin of a piston, and it's a hardened piece, but again, this has no wear on it at all, just been grungy. All right, so I cleaned this plate up, and it looks really good. You got some gouges in it from dirt, but for the most part, the spring plate is in good shape. So I'm going to continue cleaning parts, and then we'll put it back together. Okay, one other thing. You could use steel wool to help clean parts off if you don't have a wire wheel or anything like that. It really works quite well on these. The plating that they use on these is amazing. This is looks like it's a stainless steel piece, but it had paint on it, so look how nice it cleaned up, okay? Same thing with these little shim plates here. You can put them in here and just go over them with some steel wool to get the majority of the gunk off the plate, because it's stuck to it, and even the cleaning brush isn't going to do a good job of getting it off, but this little scale rust that's on there will come right off easily with the steel wool. See? See the way the rust is over here, and I'll just hit it with the steel wool. Takes it right off. Right, I want to show you something. The plunger is held in with 2 pins, and they exit out of the bottom over here. if you want to knock them through. So you can see how it works here. It goes back and forth with these two pins, holding it in place with this kind of like fork-shaped lever. So I'm going to punch the pins out now with a pin punch like this. Okay, and take out the plunger and clean it up and polish it and put it back together again. You have to be very careful you don't lose the pins and that you do indeed have a pin punch like this to get out the pins properly and knock them out without ruining them, and then you can replace them. Sometimes I used to put these in with hardened steel pins, but these are in very good shape and they seem to work fine. So the pins will be lined up now with the exit hole. You see the way they're lined up with the exit hole now? So now I can drive them out the rest of the way. Here's one. And two. All right. I'm going to just clean this up on the wire wheel. This way I can smooth it out and get in there and get some more of the junk out of here. But I'm not going to remove this spring because this is a real bitch to get out. But at least it'll give me access to clean it out better and get inside here and clean this out. This is your reverse bias spring. What happens is this has to be compressed down a lot to pull this out. I really don't want to bother with it. It looks pretty clean. All right, so what I do is I jam a punch in here to kind of put the lever arm over the one side so I can get the plunger in. This way I can slide the plunger in like this. Now these holes, by the way, one of them is slightly larger than the other. So make sure you put the right pin that corresponds to the hole in there. So I do this like that, okay? This is the bigger of the two pins. Good there. Now I can release this and allow me to get the pin on the other side. Let's see. Take the other punch and then kind of wedge this in like that, this way. That'll allow us to get this pin in clean. And we get nice action. So now we got everything back the way it was. Nice and clean. I'm just going to put a little grease on everything and just reverse everything that I did before. Now, by the way, you can see how the Hurst shifter works, okay? It's normally biased to be in the 3/4 gate. You see the way the plunger is in this gate. And as you move the shifter and you pivot it, it goes into this gate, which is the 1/2. So when you move it over this way, it goes into the 1/2 gate. And then with extra effort, it goes into the reverse gate. It's a pretty simple design. But this is a nice shape. See the way there's no play at all like this. I really like that. That goes like this. Now I take a punch and make sure it's kind of aligned a little bit. Okay. Just drop it in like this. So we just drop it all in, make sure it's nice and aligned. Then we'll put this plate in, we'll put it back in the vise, put the plate in, and put the pin in. So now I got everything back in place, and I got this little punch holding everything sort of centered. And I'm going to catch the body on the vise on the very bottom so I can kind of pivot it a little bit. And I'll put my pry tool back in here. Now you could use a punch maybe or something to spread the body. There's a lot of ways you could do this. So if you got it spread enough that you could just slide this in like this. You're in. Now what I'll do is I'll line this up and put the pivot pin in here. Let me get around to this side over here. Kind of use the punch to kind of line things up. Here we go. Let's get that piece back in here. I'll put a little red Loctite on these threads here. I used the Hurst 373-3163 installation kit. A few things I want to point out. Over here and over here, I use grade 8 flat washers because the washers that they supply are a little bit thin. This particular mount setup is a very universal mount, and it comes with a slot and also a double hole over here to use for the 32 spline extension housings. It's a very common system. There's also another version of this that takes the longer slots for the bolt-on style arms used in the actual GM transmissions. But if you're using a auto gear transmission, you would use the 373-3163 no matter what. And you can either use it with this shifter that's straight or the offset shifter that's used on the later cars. Very common setup. And it's the same installation kit that's used in the 55 Chevys. I've got my hardened steel bushings installed. Keeps it very rigid. Now there's going to be some wear on this a little bit because of the some of the wear, but this was a really nice shifter. It came out really nice. I'm really happy with it. So I hope you liked my video on cleaning up Hurst shifters and how to take them apart. This is another shifter I got here. You'll notice the way the reverse arm is bent at an angle. So some bodies are a little bit different shaped as far as the gates go, but they're pretty much, again, all the same mechanism. This is a shifter from a company called Rolltech. They make a billet aluminum shifter based on the Hurst Super Speedway shifter. It's a pretty neat shifter, and it's basically a duplicate of what Hurst mechanism is inside. So even though it's a little bigger than the Comp Plus shifter, it kind of has the same function. So pretty much all these shifters kind of work the same. So don't be afraid to take one apart and clean it up if you need to. There's always some oddball stuff though. I got some oddball shifters that I think you'd like. Check this out. Okay, this was called a Biber Changer. It was the first sequential shifter made for the Muncie 4-speed. It had two shift handles. This shift handle here was up shifts, and this shift handle was down shifts. And you always pull it in the same direction down, never back. So it was just pulling the shifter down this way for up shift, and then pull it again for down shift. So you were just going one direction back. And if you notice, there are no gates. The shift handle is just attached to a rod. Each shift handle again to a rod. And then you add a little separate piece for reverse. See? The whole mechanism was a rotary cam mechanism that bolted on standoffs on your existing side cover. You took your side cover apart, you took out the original D10 cams in it, and you replaced it with this cover with rotary cams. And that's how it worked. So what happened was you'd pull one shifter one way. Look how crazy the throw is on this thing. And you go back and you pull another stick the other way, and that will put the cam in the opposite direction. This thing was huge. Took up a lot of space. You really had to hack your floor apart. You know, with the big stick over here, with this mechanism sticking out about 4 or 5 inches from the side cover. It was a crazy setup. But hey, that was the 60s. That's the way they did stuff back then. Take care. Enjoy my videos. Please subscribe.